Today's topic is one that I am incredibly passionate about because it is affecting just about every household in America in one way, shape, or form. It is preparing back to school in a very chaotically stressful world. And support for teachers, support for students, support for parents. And this does affect all of us because even if you don't have kids or your kids are grown, you've got grandkids or you've got nieces and nephews or your next door neighbor, it affects all of us. There's not one person this isn't affected by. So my name is Sarah Hine. For those of you that are joining us for the first time or you're listening to this recording, I have been with Amare Global since the very, very beginning, and I fell in love with the pioneers of the mental wellness movement. And so I really wanted to give families hope. I wanted to give families hope in this back to school season that there are tools and there is a very positive community in a very negative world that is here to support you in your journey of raising these kiddos and working in stressful times. So I brought on two people that I'm really excited to interview tonight. I think they have phenomenal stories that can really shed some light. And so the first person I want to introduce is a person that is basically related to me. I mean, I'm just going to say it like it is, because I feel like I'm completely adopted into her family. But Laura Unz, I've known for many, many years, really got to know her a couple of years ago. I'm in Wisconsin, she's in North Dakota. But Laura is a veteran teacher of 17 years. This will be her 17th school year, I believe. Correct, Laura? Is that right? And she's a mom, a wife, mother of three, and really has a powerful story within her own family of what brought her here to Amare. So Laura, can you just share first of all a little bit about you and what brought you here to Amare, and what the heck are teachers going through right now with school right around the corner?
I will be starting my 17th year of teaching. Actually, in a week and a half, we get our group of students. I came to Amare because 2 years ago, my son was struggling. And so we had tried meds, we had tried therapy, and I reached out to you, Sarah, and got some information about Amare and ordered it right away and started my son on the products. And that's what brought me to Amare. Teachers right now, I will first say that I love teaching. I love getting that new group of students every year. It's so hard to say goodbye to them at the end of the year, but teaching has changed. The education system has changed. Teachers are leaving like crazy right now. They are stressed, they're mentally exhausted. We have so much stuff on our plates right now and just not enough time. The students have changed, and just the environment is not good anymore for most of us mentally. And so they're leaving to go to retail jobs. Even like I had a teacher that worked as long as I have, and she quit this year to go work at Shields. It's less stress, it's less everything. Like they could just get the same amount of money for no stress. So just going to work every day and coming home and getting to be with their family. So teachers are very stressed. It's very hard to be excited about this school year. Last year was the first year I actually considered leaving. I figured I'd be a teacher all my life. I'd retire, and last year, year 16, did me in. Like I was ready to look for another job this summer. I didn't. I'm still going back, but I'm hoping that this year is going to be better and things are going to start looking up, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. Our district has tons of openings still because teachers don't want to be in that position anymore. They're looking for other jobs. So I don't even know what we're going to do once school starts in a week and a half.
Wow. You know, it's I just got goosebumps. We're in uncharted times for sure. And even though the three of us can't fix these problems today, what we can do is we can equip people with the support, the nutritional support to help them deal with this. Laura, I just have to, share with you, or have you share a little bit more in depth. I mean, your son was 12 years old when he came to this journey in Amare. And he was really, really struggling. Can you just share a little bit of the symptoms? Because I think it's so relatable to a lot of parents listening. Can you just share a little bit about what he went through?
Of course. It's actually last week was his 2-year anniversary of like when I started to see some changes. He's a goalie in
Mm.
hockey and he absolutely loves the game. And so last week he was at a goalie camp, and 2 years ago he was at the same goalie camp. But by the end of the second day, he was too sick to go anymore. Like he couldn't pinpoint what was wrong. He was just sick and he just stayed home. He didn't go the last 3 days. And this camp is like one of his idols. He works with them whenever possible. And looking back, that's my first red flag. He started withdrawing from things that he had once loved and was isolating himself. I didn't exactly put the two and two together until actually this year when I was like, oh my gosh, like I think that's when it started. He was withdrawing. He didn't want to go to goalies. And so I should have thought then something was up, but I didn't until that school year. So September, he went down into a deep, dark depression, huge social anxiety. He didn't want to come out of his room. He was crying all the time. He ended up not going to school for almost an entire month. We just couldn't get him there. Crying, sobbing. We were going to call the officer that's at the school to come and get him because we just physically couldn't get him to middle school. And so we went through a very, very dark time of him becoming physical with us, which was never like him. He didn't want to go out of his room. He was always in the dark, crying himself to sleep, not sleeping too. That was a big thing. It was just a very, very tough year.
Oh, we're going to come back to that story. But I want parents to just hear these stories because Laura, it's just like you said in the beginning, you just didn't piece it together. And I think that the world is so stressful now for our kids, for all of us, that we have to become more consciously aware of what to look for so we can nip it faster. And so I thank you for sharing this vulnerability because I just feel like it's going to help a lot of parents. And he's doing amazing. So we're going to come back to that. And that's my favorite part of the story is when we get to transform these kiddos and adults, which just gave me goosebumps. All right. So Valerie Stuggerty, did I just say it right? Did I say it?
You got it.
I didn't say it right, but I was close enough.
You were close.
Oh my goodness. Well, Valerie came very highly recommended to me by a dear friend of mine. And she has just a really amazing background, which I'm so grateful, Valerie, that you're here because you have been a counselor working with kids that have gone through trauma. You've worked for many school districts. You are a mental health professional. And we are so excited to pick your brain. You had your own private practice. You really have the credentials behind you that I think can really shed some hope and some light to a lot of these families and teachers in this next coming school year, because you're the person that hears it all, I'm sure. I mean, the stories and the books that you could probably write, which is why I have you here. So Valerie, tell us a little bit about your story and what brought you to the mental wellness company.
Okay, so where do I begin with my story? About 2 years ago or so, I have autoimmune issues and I had gotten COVID and I was pretty sick and I had brain fog really bad.
Mom, they bit me in the ear.
It never fails. It never
I'm
fails.
so sorry.
You're
This is the mom life. As everyone can see, I came outside to hide from the kids. Didn't work well. So 3 boys, and this is, yes, that's so typical.
I love it.
Yeah, so I got really sick, had COVID, and really just could not get my brain fog to go away. Awful headaches for months and months. Really good girlfriend of mine who is a brain coach who works with the company as well. And she had shared her story regarding her son who had suicidal ideation, and she has pharmaceutical and biology background. And she really researched and looked at the science behind the products. So with that being said, I really felt like I tried everything. And what else am I going to do? I know I'm in a place that I need support. Meanwhile, I'm still working and I'm supporting everybody else, and I'm not doing it the best that I know that I can. So I took a leap of faith and I reached out, and I can tell you within a week of starting the fundamentals pack, I felt like I could breathe. I had really bad anxiety at the time, and my headache started to subside. And then after about 3 months, I was like, my life is back. It was just like a miracle. I felt like it was really. So a little bit about my story is we have 3 boys. My one son has auditory processing disorder, dyslexia, and ADHD. And he started a stimulant. He was younger. It really marked the symptoms. He was able to sit during school. That's really was the goal. We didn't know different. And unfortunately, it was heartbreaking for me as a counselor. And when I was in private practice, there's psychiatrists and psychiatric nurse practitioners. And I know what trial and error of psych meds can do. I've seen it firsthand. And it can be really disheartening at times to see what people go through. So I started my youngest on a regimen, and within, I'd say about 3 to 4 months, I started kind of weaning him off of his pharmaceutical med. And the teachers at his school were calling me and emailing and said, what is going on with him? He is like totally a different kid. He's retaining information. His homework was all done correctly. He's asking questions. He was reading, like, which is not typical of someone with all of, his educational struggles. So my oldest son has ADD, inattentive type, and anxiety. So I started him on the fundamentals pack and happy juice. And we were able to get him off of his medication as well. And his anxiety symptoms were still there a little bit, which I kind of correlate with there was a pandemic. He transitioned from 8th grade into high school. Social interactions very different, not typical for what the school year looked like. So he was really having some anxiety, and it was really when he was getting to school. So I'm like, I've got to fix this. What can I do? Well, what I did do was add the Kids Mood Plus, which has saffron in it. No joke, that morning when he left for school, I'm waiting for him to text me, not one text. From that day forward, he has been like, he's socializing now, he's sleeping well, he's good. So it has been a blessing for myself, for 2 of my kids. My 3rd child, he does the happy juice, and he is on the Ignite, which he's really loving it. He's doing great with it. And his appetite is suppressed in a sense that he's not wanting to eat extra things. He's eating what's comfortable for him. In the summertime, the boys want to eat whatever they can. So it's been really a great experience for all of us.
Wow. These are the stories. I mean, that's what brought me here to Amare. Was I sat many years myself in hospitals with my husband, who was very sick. And I would hear the same stories in the waiting rooms of the caregivers and the families. They were exhausted, they were tired, they were stressed, they were foggy brained. Kids were struggling in school. Like, it was always the same. And when I first looked at Amare, it was meant and designed to address these common symptoms that so many people are struggling with. And I remember thinking, if this is the real deal, this is going to help so many people. And here we are 5 years later. It's the real deal. So Valerie, you then started to bring it into your practice, and tell us what that looks like and what are some results you're getting with working with other children now.
So what I'm seeing is, I was a little bit kind of torn, to be honest. Is this professional? Is this something that I should be doing? But I feel that it's ethically appropriate because I've lived it. It's not that I'm trying to give somebody something that I didn't experience my own self and that my children didn't experience. So I share my story and my kid's story. And if people are interested, I'll share information with them. I have a lot of families that is, interesting. And it's the whole thing with the family piece right now within the school dynamic. We're looking at a big mental health crisis in a sense. And I'm so sorry if you can hear, I think there's kids out here playing.
You're fine. You're
okay.
normal.
I think it's, we're in a situation with teachers, with moms, with dads, with kids. We're seeing that the kid is overwhelmed. We're seeing that the teacher's overwhelmed, the parent's overwhelmed. And I think we're not focusing on the big picture. We're trying to kind of isolate what is. So example of that is My child is, symptoms are they're not sleeping, they're not wanting to go to school, they're isolating, whatever that might look like. Then we have a teacher that is, there's frustration, there's overwhelm, there's kind of impulsive traits that are happening, or not really understanding what's going on with the child. So, I mean, should I go inside? Is it too loud?
You're fine. You're
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
You're making us all feel normal. Everybody
good.
that's going to be listening
Well, my
to this
dogs
are going to
aren't
be
working.
like,
That'll be the next
she's
thing.
making me feel normal because this is real life, like chaos. So it's like actually very fitting.
Okay, good. So I think we're really trying to look at one person that's really struggling, when the truth is, if a child is struggling, most likely the parent is struggling and feeling overwhelmed. So I do a lot of virtual coaching, and I have a lot of parents that reach out and say, my child is this, but I'm feeling this. And that's okay. And that's normal. It's very typical. If mom's struggling, the child could be struggling. It kind of goes in cycles. So unless we can really take care of our own self as a parent, our own self as a teacher, we are not going to be able to best support the child, regardless if it's in the classroom or in our own home. And that is really the piece that I am seeing. There's overwhelm, there's burnout. Burnout is beyond burnout. When I walked into those schools last year, those teachers were ready for the end of the school year already. And it was sad. And I've been working with teachers for a long time, and to see they don't feel heard. They feel like they're just kind of there, and the teacher shortage is real. So they have to do their job. Then, typically they may get prep time. That prep time, if they get it, is shorter, or they're covering a class, or they're covering a lunch, because there used to be lunch people going in. Like, every district's different, but it's real. It's real. And how do we help and support? And my biggest thing is we need to balance our own system. So if we're feeling overwhelmed and we're feeling like life is too much right now, how do we really work with this? It's very typical to have these feelings, and they can come for a week or 2 weeks. But when we're looking over 2 months and they're consistent, we really, really should look at something different within our being. And that's really inflammation that's happening within our system. We're most likely, we're looking at warning signs now. So we're, like we said, losing sleep. We're not eating the same. We don't want to socialize. It could be no, motivation to go to the gym, not wanting to go to work. Teachers not bringing anything home. When they're done, they're done. They're everything else that they have to grade papers that they typically would have done two years ago. They're not doing it anymore. They're not putting the extra work in. And it's, we're losing a lot of who we were, because we just unfortunately lost that social piece for so long, and people are stuck. And that's really unfortunate.
I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. And Valerie, what I would love to do is just talk a little bit too about, I work with some pediatricians, different healthcare providers, and what they've told me straight across the board is they've not been taught nutrition. They've been taught to push pharmaceuticals, and that they've almost been taught to feel guilty by sharing something that is more alternative or holistic, when in reality, they're making money, or making a lot of money for pharmaceutical companies. There's a time and a place for meds, but we are way overusing them and not looking at the fuel for our bodies, which is our food. And would you agree with that? Are you in agreement with that? Is that what you have found?
So I can say during my schooling, there was no educational classes. There was no talk about plant-based support. This type of supplementation, there was not. When I was in private practice, I had many families ask me, I don't want to put my child on pharmaceutical right now. What else do you do? And I didn't have any answers. And that's the truth.
Yes.
And it's
that is the number one thing I hear from pediatricians. Pediatricians will tell me that the number one thing that they are dealing with right now is mental health cases in children. And the parents, 9 out of 10 will say, is there anything else but the medications? Because I'm concerned about the side effects. And what I want everybody to understand, we don't have to get huge into the science, but when you are under chronic stress, day in, day out stress, okay, so chronic, that's our world right now. That's our world. It's not a day where you have a really bad day and then the next day is really good. It's chronically overworked, burned out, and the burnout just keeps going over and over and over again. And what happens to the human body is it disrupts our cortisol, our stress hormone. And we now know through science that microbiome, or the gut bacteria, gets all disrupted. And that can turn on or off the signaling to these hormones. And it can make us feel like crap. All the symptoms of isolation, not being able to think, not being able to, anger issues, sad issues, focus issues, it all exasperates it all. And so curious out of both of you as a teacher and as a mental health professional, do you hear a lot of kiddos that have stomach aches, or teachers who are under stress have gut issues, stomach aches, pooping issues, feel like they're nauseous? And who would have thought that when our heads feel off, we feel nauseous? Well, it's all interconnected.
It is
And
very much interconnected. And I really, now that you just said that out loud, I've had so many teachers share exactly that with me. And what I think where people are kind of stuck as well is, well, those are also COVID symptoms. So it's nothing else. It's just maybe from when I had COVID, this is where I am. And I think that's happening as well.
oh, that's an interesting perspective. And I agree. Like, I think it's all, we've also been bombarded. And here's the good news, whether it's COVID related or stress related, it's all interrelated. And when you restore the gut bacteria, these really strain specific microbiome, it turns on the signaling to your immune system, turns on the signaling for your metabolic hormones, which is gaining weight, your sex hormones, which is affecting your moods greatly. It's affecting even your sex drive. It's affecting hot flashes, cognitive thinking, muscle mass, inflammation, all of it. So the great thing that we have found is we've had a lot of people that have had long haulers with COVID, you know, that COVID part that sticks with them, which has been nicknamed the long haulers. And we have seen, now again, for the FDA that might listen to this, we're not saying that this cures COVID or long haulers. What we are saying is nutritional support, building the immune system, can only help. We've known from the beginning with COVID that healthier people had a greater chance. That's what the CDC was even telling us. And so we know that healthier people with their gut dealing with stress get into something called stress resiliency. And that is a word I really never, 5 years ago before Amare, I never really thought of as part of health. But what we want to do is equip all these people, these beautiful souls. We want to equip them with the tools nutritionally and positive community, so that when they're under chronic stress, their bodies don't go into that fight or flight mode. Their bodies are able to be more level. And instead of being ticked off for days and days and days, they might get upset over something. They're able to release it because they can think more clearly. They can feel more clearly. They can love more unconditionally, and they're able to release it, and it doesn't just do this horrible disruption. And so, Laura, I'm going to come back to you because you've been 2 years now with a son who was really, really struggling. And would you say, as a teacher, looking outside at your own family and dealing with a lot of kids on a daily basis, would you say your son was a pretty extreme case in your own words? Like, would you agree with that?
Definitely. Yeah. He was probably the most extreme that I've ever experienced myself or heard about, just because of his tantrums, his crying on the bathroom floor, refusal to go to school for over a month. Like, he was drastic. I don't see a lot of that in the elementary classroom or that I've experienced, but I know there's tons of kids out there that are experiencing
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah. Now let's fast forward it to 2 years later. The world's been very stressful the last 2 years. So it's not like it got better. Where is he at now? How has the stress resiliency, these phased benefits of continuously feeding him day in and day out, these strain specific microbiome, how has it changed him?
He is completely back to normal. Like, I have my son back, and it's amazing. He was on depression meds. He was going to therapy. We were able to phase him out of therapy using Amari, and now he is off all anxiety depression meds. He is loving being a goalie. He was at goalie camp all last week with a smile on his face every day, loving life. We went for a bike ride all around town this morning. Like, he is just back to being the son I remember before COVID.
Ah, so Grayson right there, for all of you listening, even you teachers, like, listen, it is possible even to find joy in chaos. In the Bible, it says to be joyful in all circumstances. And it's hard to do that when you don't feel good. But if we can help the human body to feel good, you can still smile and feel joyful even during difficult times. And so Grayson is a beautiful example of that. And I'm so grateful that you're so vulnerable to share his story and that he's so open about it because he knows how he feels. Valerie, are you echoing this? Are you seeing the same thing? You've been about 1.5 years on Amari. Are you seeing a change, even though circumstances haven't changed? Do you feel a change?
I can tell you for my own self, and I am a long hauler COVID person, whatever you want to call that. Thank God, this is the best I have felt even before COVID with all of my autoimmune stuff. I have Hashimoto's, I had papillary thyroid cancer, I had a total hysterectomy. So I had a lot of medical stuff. So this to me is like a miracle for myself. For my son, he was, when he was on the stimulant, he responded. He's sad. He wasn't creative. And I feel like, just like Laura's saying, he is 100% back. He is happy. He is just himself. He is doing everything he would typically do, but he's able to regulate himself in a very appropriate way, in a sense. So yes, he's 100% himself, and he's so full of life and so happy. I could not be. It's just makes my heart beyond. There's no words.
Mm. Oh, I love these stories. So let's get to the meat and potatoes for everybody listening. Where do you start? Where do you start? What do you recommend? And so I'd love to hear from both of you. So Laura, from a teacher's perspective, if you could tell another teacher, listen, I would at least start with this pack or this product if you're really feeling stressed, period. What would you recommend?
At the very least, our happy juice. Like, I absolutely love our happy juice. During the school year, I usually had it like at 4 o'clock when I came home, just to give me that extra pep and get stuff done in the evening, not have to lay on the couch or anything. But that is our number one. I would have everybody drinking that.
Yeah, the happy juice by far has become like we call it the hero product. There is three different products you can mix together in a drink. The Mentibiotics is like the hero. It is strain specific bacteria that's very specific to anxiety, dealing with stress, dealing with emotions, being able to think more clearly. It's not your typical, it's probiotic. It's a very specific strain of a probiotic. And then when you add it with the other ingredients that we have that help with motivation, that help with energy, and they're all sourced sustainably, all natural. It's amazing, that combination of what it does. Valerie, what would you say would be like a really solid recommendation for a child that's really struggling? What would you recommend?
So I do like the happy juice as well. I have a lot of success with children that are on that. Both of my kids take it. I have another client whose child takes it, who she said I could share her testimony if you're interested, but it is so heartwarming to me. This is 8-year-old
Please.
child, 8-year-old child that really, he has ADHD, and he was really struggling in school, very, very hyper, but mom, she doesn't care he's hyper. She just wants him to be happy and successful. And it's at 8 years old, when you're able to articulate, my brain just won't shut off. That's pretty intelligent, but it's true, right? And that's what we always say to the parents I work with. It doesn't matter what the diagnosis is. It really doesn't matter. We want to make sure that your child feels good. So he said that he able to share, that his brain listens easier. He's getting his homework done. Everything is just easier. I don't know how else to explain it, he says. Logan feels on the products, he stated, it's like my brain knows what job it has to do and it does it. Then when it has to do another job, it does it. And then mom says, that's from the horse's mouth. She said he used to use a sleep aid and he doesn't do any other products but the Happy Juice now. He's able to fall asleep with no issues. And what I love most of all, and I can relate to, is mom words. Don't get me wrong, he is still high energy, but that's what I wanted. I wanted him to stay the same, just make it easier for him. And I think that speaks to him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And I love when these kids can articulate it in their own words at their level, how they're feeling. It's like this wake up. So Happy Juice is great for kids. It's great for adults. The tip I want to give you all listening is that if you're under an extreme amount of stress, you can double shot the antibiotics. That's the really creme brulee of the strain of bacteria. If you're having a really off day, you've had a really rough day at work as a teacher, double shot it, have another one, even for a couple of days in a row. I know, Laura, you've been through that, where there are days where you need that. I have been through that. I now know how I feel. And when you start to feel good again, I realized when I started on Amari 5 years ago, I had forgotten what it felt like to feel good. I had been 5 years at that time with a very sick husband I was caregiving for. And so I kind of lost who I was in that process and didn't even realize I lost who I was. And I think that's very true for teachers right now. They're caregivers. And so very important. The other thing that I want to encourage everybody is what I loved about this brand is that there's what we call stackables. You can look at like, okay, I definitely am struggling with anxiety. I'm definitely struggling with stress. That's a given. Happy Juice is a great place to start. But if you're struggling with sleep, you can stack our sleep product. If you're struggling with a lot of stress and anxiety, add our mood product. It's very fast acting. It takes it to a whole different notch. If you're struggling with a lot of autoimmune or pain or inflammation can even be any autoimmune disease, which is there's over 80, but also a Crohn's, a colitis, an IBS. That's all inflammation. It's intestinal inflammation. Relief is an amazing thing to add to it. If you're really struggling, teachers, especially, well, not just especially women, men too. If you are struggling with your hormones, if you are struggling with that menstrual cycle for women, if you're struggling with low muscle mass, you don't feel like you want to be touched, you have absolutely no desire for, let's be honest, sex. Those are very key indicators. And that can be very damaging to a marriage. Let's be real, or a relationship. Those are key examples that your hormones are off. And so we have a happy hormone pack that can address the stress, can address the sex hormones and our weight hormones. So I want to encourage all of you listening to take a mental note and go, where am I struggling? What are the things I'm struggling the most with? Talk to the person that sent you this recording and to have that conversation. Start with Happy Juice. And then our goal is to help you figure out what's lacking or missing, the missing link in your own health, so that when you show up to the classroom, you in 2 years from now, in a year from now, 3 months from now, Christmas time, that you are feeling like Grayson, or you're feeling like Valerie's children, or this 8-year-old child that she just shared the story with, that even though perhaps our circumstances haven't changed, we have. And it's because we've taken ownership. And that's what this is about. It's not about placing blame. It's about, hey, what can I do, not what I can't do. And I think that mind shift is what we need to shout loud and clear to everyone you know. So if you know a teacher, please send them this, or any profession. It's not just teachers. I work with people from all different careers. And I have to say, most careers, you guys, I'm hearing the same thing that I'm hearing teachers. People are short-staffed. They do not have enough workers in every industry. They're doing way more work than the average position that they normally did. People are crabby, there's rules, there's division. It's in every industry. And so I think we can be a lighthouse of positivity and happiness in this world. So Laura, before we go, is there anything that you would add to it, or anything you want to close and just give parents hope and teachers hope?
I just want teachers to remember that your students deserve you to be happy, healthy, and thriving. So take time for yourself, like do self-care, go for walks, leave work at work, And if you're still struggling, reach out to somebody. Don't just keep it internalized. Talk to your coworkers, talk to an online Facebook group, find somebody to talk to.
Oh, great advice. Great advice. And Valerie, anything that you want to share?
I think I like what Laura just said. I also think that, you know, where we are, unfortunately, we're kind of accustomed to fast acting products. So if we get, you know, doctor prescribed something, we think all of a sudden within a week or, you know, maybe that night we're going to feel better. The reality of it is we're not going to heal our gut if it happens overnight. So patience is really, really important in understanding the process. So whoever, you know, did bring you here and you want more information really about how to take the products, how long it may take for them to work for you, I think it's very important to understand that, because this will not happen overnight. Our bodies did not become inflamed. Our microbiome did not, you know, this just didn't happen overnight. So being patient, really understanding and wanting, if you're really ready to feel better and you want a difference in your life or your child's life, then come up with a really, really good plan. Have someone to talk you through it, because this is the time that we all need all of us need someone to talk to. So my best advice
Great
is
advice.
be patient and use your
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, the self-care piece that Laura just mentioned and the time piece that Valerie just said, my rule when I work with people is at least 3 to 6 months, not days, not weeks. 3 to 6 months. But the great thing is you'll start to notice some subtle differences. It's like a gradual change, and some it's faster than others, but don't get discouraged. And to continuously talk to the person you're working with to problem solve through it. You might have to try a different stackable type product or nutrition that you're lacking that we just haven't pinpointed yet, but don't give up. Keep talking, keep working on self-care. Laura and Valerie, this was really important. Thank you. God bless you both for just sharing your hearts with so many people. I know that this conversation is going to bless a lot of people to have hope and to enjoy this next coming school year. So thanks, ladies. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.